Welcome back to Historical American Girl Read-Alouds with Mrs. Mansfield. We are ready for Chapter 4 of Meet Kit today. You may remember in Chapter 3, Kit found out that her dad had lost his job, had lost his car dealership business. And so she realized that there were more important things in life than worrying about getting blamed for a teacup being broken when her older brother Charlie told her everything that was really going on with their family. So right now, Kit has been talking with Ruthie about what kinds of things she can do to help out her family in this circumstance. So this chapter is called Mother's Brainstorm. But Dad didn't get a job that day, or the day after that, or the day after that, though he certainly seemed to be trying. Every day he put on a good suit and rode the streetcar downtown. Every day he said he was going to have lunch with a friend or a business acquaintance. Every day Kit hoped he'd come home with good news of a new job. But every afternoon, Dad came home tired and discouraged. All the bad news in the newspapers seemed to be about Kit's own life now. One afternoon, after a week had passed, Kit and her mother were on the back porch shelling peas when a huge black car pulled up in the driveway. In case you don't know what shelling peas means, when those little round green peas first are grown, they come in a long pea pod. So in order to get the peas out, you have to break them open and peel them out. And so that's called shelling peas. So that's what Kit and her mother are doing as a huge black car pulled up in the driveway. "Oh no," sighed Mother. Kit asked, "Is it Uncle Hendrik?" Mother nodded. She took off her apron and handed it and the peas to Kit. "Quick," she said, "take these into the kitchen. And Kit, dear, while you're in there, pour us some iced tea and bring it to the terrace." Mother smoothed her hair, adjusted her smile, and walked gracefully toward the car. Kit was glad to escape inside. Uncle Hendrik was her mother's uncle and the oldest relative Mother had left. He was tall and gray, and he lived in a tall gray house near downtown Cincinnati. He always seemed to be in a bad mood, like Grandfather in the Heidi book, before Heidi made him nice. "The last thing Uncle Hendrik needs is a lemon," Kit thought as she put a slice into his glass. "He's already a sourpuss." In case you don't know what Heidi is, it's a book that's been around for a really long time. It was actually written in 1881. It's still around today. A lot of movies have been made about it. And it's about a little girl who's really sick and she has to go stay with her grandfather in the Swiss mountains, and he's grumpy at first, but eventually he becomes nice. So Heidi's another book you may have heard of that's been around since Kit was young. He's already a sourpuss. Kit put the iced tea on a tray and carried it to the terrace. Mother was sitting on a wicker chair, but Uncle Hendrik was pacing back and forth. When he saw Kit, he stopped. "Oh, here it comes," thought Kit. Without even saying hello, Uncle Hendrik barked at Kit. "What's the capital of North Dakota?" "Bismarck," answered Kit. She was used to such questions from Uncle Hendrik, and her fourth grade teacher would be glad that she knew the capitals. If he wasn't asking her about capitals, he was asking her multiplication facts. Worst of all were his word problems. I have 2 bushels of Brussels sprouts I'm selling for 5 cents a peck, he said now. How much do you pay me? Kit put the tray on the table to gain some time. She could never keep bushels and pecks straight. Bushels and pecks were units of measurement back in their day. We don't use bushels and pecks anymore. And who wants 2 bushels of Brussels sprouts anyway, she thought. 50 cents, she guessed. Wrong, said Uncle Hendrik. You may go. Mother gave Kit a sympathetic look. But Kit felt sorrier for Mother than she did for herself. She went inside, but she stayed in the dining room where she could hear everything they said. Margaret, Uncle Hendrik sighed. Didn't I tell you and Jack what a mistake it was to sink all your money into that car dealership? If you 2 had listened to me, you would not be in the fix you are in now. And don't expect me to help you. I won't throw good money after bad. We'll be all right, Uncle, said Mother. I'm sure Jack will find a job soon. Humph, snorted Uncle Hendrik. No, he will not him, and not during these hard times. Kit realized her fists were clenched. Ooh, she wanted to run out to the terrace and punch Uncle Hendrik. She hated it when he spoke about Dad that way. But Mother didn't say anything. And what will you do in the meantime? Uncle Hendrik continued. You should sell this house right away, though who'd buy it I can't imagine. Such foolish extravagance to buy it in the first place. You must owe the bank thousands of dollars. This is our home, Uncle, Kit heard Mother say. We'll do whatever we can to keep it. Indeed, said Uncle Hendrik. And what might that be, if I may ask? Mother didn't answer. Oh, just as I thought, said Uncle Hendrik smugly. You haven't any idea. There's nothing you can do. Well, said Mother, we could take in boarders, paying guests. Kit felt as surprised as Uncle Hendrik sounded. Boarders? He gasped. Yes, said Mother. It's perfectly respectable. We'll take in teachers or nurses from the hospital. Gosh, thought Kit, would you listen to Mother? But Uncle Hendrik had evidently heard enough. Well, Margaret, he said, all I can say is that if my sister, your dear mother, could see you now, it would break her heart. With that, Uncle Hendrik strode back to his car and drove away. Kit ventured out onto the terrace. Are we really going to take in boarders? She asked Mother. Mother smiled, and this time it was one of her real smiles that made Kit feel like smiling too. I surprised myself by saying that, said Mother. I'm afraid I just wanted to shock Uncle Hendrik, but I rather like the idea. Mother laughed. Yes, she said, I like the idea a lot. It was a brainstorm. What's Dad going to say? Asked Kit. That, said Mother, is a good question. So taking in boarders isn't real common today, but it's kind of like having an apartment. People who live in an apartment don't own their house or their room. They just pay someone who owns the building to live there. Well, back in Kit's time, I don't think there were as many apartments in some places. And when people needed money, especially during the Depression, they would use some of the extra bedrooms in their houses kind of like apartments. And so they would rent out a room to a person, probably a single person who didn't have a family, and that person would live in that bedroom. And then they would eat with the family, use the kitchen together with the family. It wasn't like a separate apartment, it was just a room that they would rent. And at this time, there would have been lots of single women who were teachers or nurses at the hospital that needed a place to rent. And so this was a good option for them too. So that's Mother's idea. Let's see what Father thinks about it. Kit was not at all sure that she liked Mother's brainstorm. She wasn't crazy about the idea of strangers living in their house, especially considering the way Sterling had turned out. Kit could tell that Dad didn't like the idea either. Mother had first presented the idea to him in private, of course, before she spoke about it again at dinner that evening. Mrs. Howard was serving Sterling his dinner up in their room, so only the family was at the table. "We have plenty of room," said Mother. "We should put it to use." "I don't think it's necessary," said Dad. "I'm making every effort to find a job. Meanwhile, this'll be a way for us to earn some money," said Mother. Dad sighed. "I hate the idea of you waiting on other people, especially in our own home." "We'll all chip in to help," answered Mother, in a way that made it clear that the question of taking in boarders was settled. Kit wasn't surprised. There was never any way to stop Mother once she'd made up her mind. "But where will the boarders stay?" asked Kit. "Charlie can move to the sleeping porch," said Mother, "and we can put someone in his room." "It's okay with me," said Charlie with a shrug. "Thank you, dear," said Mother. "I'm also planning to find 2 school teachers or nurses to share the guest room." So in case you don't know what a sleeping porch is, back in times before there was air conditioning, houses got really hot. And so a lot of times people would screen in their porches and maybe put windows in there too. But then when it was hot in the house, especially the children could sleep out in beds on the sleeping porch and the cool breeze would come in through the screens. So today we'd probably call it like a screened in porch or a 3 seasons room. We tend not to make them as bedrooms anymore, but at that time they were sometimes used as bedrooms. So Charlie's great with sleeping out there and giving up his room for someone to stay in. "I'm also planning to find 2 school teachers or nurses to share the guest room." Kit perked up. "Does that mean that Sterling and his mother will be leaving?" she asked. That'd be one good thing about Mother's plan, at least." "Oh, they'll stay," said Mother. "They'll be paying guests from now on." "But where will they stay?" asked Kit. Mother looked at Kit and said calmly, "Sterling and his mother will move into your room." "Mine?" asked Kit in a shocked, squeaky voice. "Yes," said Mother. "We need them. They've got to stay if we want to make enough money to pay the mortgage every month. I figured it out." "But Mother," exclaimed Kit, "where will I sleep?" "I was thinking," said Mother briskly, "that you could move up to the attic. There's plenty of room up there." "The attic?" thought Kit indignantly. She was being exiled to the hot, stuffy attic so that Sniffle-Nose Sterling could move into her room with his hankies and his meals on trays and his Vicks Vapo Rub. "Oh, oh, oh!" In Kit's mind, she saw her headline again in letters that were 4 inches tall. "It's not fair." But Kit, panted Ruthie, out of breath from climbing the stairs up to the attic, you don't even like your room that much. Remember, Kit's mother had made it all pink and fluffy and frilly, so Kit doesn't even like her room. It was the next day. Kit and Ruthie were inspecting the attic. It smelled of mothballs, and it was gloomy because the windows were so dusty that the sun couldn't shine through them. In case you don't know what mothballs are, moths will eat cloth. So if people were storing clothing for a long time, they would put these little round balls in with the clothing to keep the moths away so the moths wouldn't eat holes through their old coats or their winter clothing and things like that. But it has a really nasty smell. So during Kit's time, a lot of people stored things in their attic, probably like a lot of people here in the Midwest use their basements. You know how your basements are full of all kinds of stuff. Well, Kit's attic probably looked something like this, with no curtains on the windows yet, because she said they're really dusty and old. But it's probably full of all kinds of antique old things that they stored their old clothing with the mothballs. So she and Ruthie are going upstairs to inspect the attic, which is going to become her bedroom. You told me your room is too pink, Ruthie said. Why are you so mad about moving out of it? Because it was mine, said Kit, knowing she sounded peevish. The fact that Ruthie was right, of course, just made Kit madder. That room belonged to me, always, ever since I was a baby. And it just kills me to think that Sterling gets to have it. Why didn't he have to move up here? I guess because his mother is paying rent now, said Ruthie calmly. She looked around. It's not so bad up here, she said. It's like the attic that Sarah Crew had to move into after she lost all her money. You know, in The Little Princess. Kit felt very impatient with Ruthie and her princesses this morning. Sarah Crew's room was transformed for her by that Indian guy, Kit said crossly. Remember? He made it beautiful. He was practically magic about it. So I'm not familiar with the story The Little Princess, so I looked it up. It's been around a long time, since 1905, and apparently the woman who wrote that book wrote The Secret Garden, which you may have heard of. She wrote 3 books that were famous for kids, and they've been around for a long time. I think maybe other people have read The Little Princess even today. But it's a story about a girl who loses her family and isn't treated very well, and so she uses her imagination to make her life better. Apparently there's a man in it who helps her make it better. So Kit said he's practically magic about it. Your mother's practically magic about making things beautiful too, said Ruthie. She'll help you up here, right? Right, said Kit. But she was dead wrong. That afternoon, while she was helping Mother make the beds, Kit asked her how they were going to fix up the attic. Mother said, I don't have time to help you right now, dear. I'm far too busy getting the rooms ready for the boarders. Mother's arms were full of sheets for the roll-away cot, which was being moved into Kit's old room for Sterling to sleep on. After you help me here, why don't you just poke around up there, she said. See what you can find. Mother spoke in such a distracted manner that Kit's feelings were hurt. Mother had been so particular about every detail in Kit's pink room, but she didn't seem to give a hoot about Kit's attic. Kit climbed slowly up the stairs to the attic. She stood in the middle of the room and looked around at the lumpy, dusty piles that surrounded her. In a far corner, she saw her old brown desk chair. She saw her old desk, too, hidden under a bumpy mattress and some boxes. Kit knelt next to one of the boxes and looked inside. Now, if I were in a book, Kit thought, I'd find something wonderful in here. But the box had only junk in it. A broken camera, a pair of binoculars, and a compass that must have belonged to Dad in the war. A gooseneck lamp and an old telephone, the kind that looked like a daffodil. Old and useless, thought Kit. So let's talk about what some of those things are that she mentioned. First of all, her desk here is what's known as a roll top desk, because this part here rolls up, just like that. It's nice because you can keep all of your work and things here and not have to clean it up when it's time to clean up, because you can just do that and it will be hidden. So this is a roll top desk, had some little compartments, little drawers inside. There's some drawers here, and this little desk part comes out. So that's Kit's old desk that had been moved up to the attic. And American Girl did make the gooseneck lamp that she mentioned, as well as the old telephone that looked like a daffodil. This is a picture of what that looks like. I don't have the gooseneck lamp or the phone, but apparently it came with the Robin Hood book that I do have. So you can see this is the gooseneck lamp that has a neck like a goose. And that's the candlestick phone that she mentioned. I'm going to show you a better picture of the candlestick phone because it's a little bit hard to see in that picture. So you can see how it looks like the head of the daffodil flower, that yellow flower that has like a center ring and then flowers around it. So that's why it reminded Kit of the daffodil. So old-fashioned phones first looked like this. This kind of a phone would have been put onto a wall. And notice that there's no dial pad, there's no numbers on it. The way that these phones worked was there's a little crank here on the side. So they would crank it up, they would speak into this part, and this part they would put up to their ear. When they would lift it up, they would push down sometimes on this little lever here, and that would signal someone called an operator. An operator's job was to be ready to take calls. When somebody wanted to make a call, they would then connect the wires to connect to the person you wanted to talk to. So when these phones came out, you would pick up the earpiece and you would say in here, I want to speak to this person in this town, and the operator would connect that for you. Then during Kit's time, they came out with the candlestick phone, like the one I showed you. There it is. Like this one. This one doesn't have a crank on it, but it doesn't have a number pad either. So you would pick up this receiver and you would wiggle the little lever there that holds it, and you would say to the operator, I want to be connected. Now the operator could stay on the line and listen in the whole time, and there was really nothing that the people making the phone call could do about that. And sometimes the operator wouldn't pick up right away, so they'd have to keep pressing down on that lever to try and get the attention of the operator. A little bit later, candlestick phones had dials on them. So you might see that same looking phone with a dial. And we don't have dials around too much today. We did when I was a little girl. Not this kind of phone, but dial phones. A little bit later, dial phones looked like this. And so to make a call, if I wanted to dial the very first number here, I would put my finger in that little circle and I would turn the dial and then let it go. And then I put my finger in the second number that I wanted to dial, turn it around and let it go. And that's how you would dial the phone numbers. And then later on, during my lifetime, I think it was, they made the little push numbers, which now they're digital. So we're like way, way advanced from this candlestick phone that Kit found in her attic. But she's not thinking they're very interesting. I'm thinking they're sounding kind of cool. So Kit has found these objects in her room, as well as a compass and binoculars. She took the compass out of the box and hung it around her neck. Then she sank down to the floor, overwhelmed by sadness. When she'd been wishing for change so that she could have a dramatic headline, she'd never imagined this. Terrible changes, and so many, and so fast. Dad had lost his job. She had lost her room. And in a way, they were going to lose their house. They'd still be living in it, but it wouldn't be the same when it was filled up with strangers. Nothing would ever be the same. Kit almost never cried. She bit her lip now and fought back tears. Then suddenly, Sterling's head appeared at the top of the stairs. "What are you doing out of bed?" Kit asked roughly, brushing away a tear. Kit could tell that Sterling knew she'd been crying, but all he said was, "I'm bringing you this stuff from your room." He came all the way up the stairs and handed Kit a box. She noticed that the photo of Ernie Lombardi, wrinkled but smoothed flat, was on top. "Thanks," said Kit. "I brought you a tack, too," said Sterling. He gave Kit the tack and looked around. "I guess you can put Ernie Lombardi up anywhere you want up here, can't you?" he said in his weirdly husky voice. Then he disappeared down the stairs. After Sterling left, Kit looked down at the photograph. She felt oddly cheered to see it. Old Sniffle-Nosed Sterling is right, she thought. I guess I can put anything anywhere I want up here. Kit looked around the long, narrow attic. The ceiling was steeply pitched. There were regular windows at each end of the room, and dormer windows that jutted out of the roof and made little pointy roof alcoves, each one about as wide as Kit was tall. The windows went almost all the way to the floor of the alcoves. Kit managed to open one of the heavy windows. She knelt down, stuck her head out, and came face to face with a leafy tree branch. At that moment, Kit got a funny, excited feeling. Suddenly, she knew exactly what she wanted to do. Do you know what she wants to do yet? Well, let me just take a minute to explain what the attic was like. When it said that the ceiling had pitched roofs, you can see this is what a pitched roof is. So it is diagonal. And so if you get right over here, like in the corners that you can't see in this picture, the roof comes down really low and you have to duck down not to hit your head. You can kind of see that a little bit in the picture too. Now I looked all over the place to give you a good visual of what the dormers and the alcoves were. An alcove is just like a little carved out space, but a dormer is this thing here you can see on the cover. So here is their roof, and a dormer kind of sticks out on the outside. But on the inside of the house, an alcove is kind of like a pushed out little cubby hole area. Most pictures of alcoves I could find were really fancy looking alcoves. This one's kind of fancy too, where hers was an unfinished attic. But you can see that they're kind of like little nooks. She said in her, in the book that it was about as wide as she was, so it's real small, kind of like this area. And the window would have gone all the way to the top of the ceiling and then all the way down to the floor. And her window area. You can see from the picture, the window probably was square, but the alcove probably had a pointy shape. So she's got these little kind of like cubbyhole nooks in her new attic room, and she can hang up anything she wants. And when she opened her window, she saw a tree branch. So let's see what her idea is. Over the next few days, Kit was glad that no one seemed to care what she was up to up in the attic. When she wasn't helping Mother downstairs, she hauled buckets of soapy water up there and scrubbed the windows till they sparkled. She swept the floor and pushed the boxes far to one end of the room. She had decided to use only half of the attic to live in and to pile junk in the other half. Finally, the cleaning was done and the fun part began. In one alcove, Kit put her roll-top desk and her swivel chair. There's her swivel chair as it swivels. She put the gooseneck lamp on the desk along with the telephone, the camera, and her typewriter. That was her newspaper alcove. In another alcove, Kit tacked up her photo of Ernie Lombardi. On a nail, she hung her catcher's mitt and the old binoculars. She figured she might need the binoculars if she ever went to a Reds game. That was her baseball alcove. In the third alcove, Kit made bookshelves out of boards and arranged all her books on them. She found a huge chair that was losing its stuffing and shoved it into the alcove and softened it with a pillow. That was her reading alcove. The last alcove was Kit's favorite. She put the lumpy mattress on an old bed frame and pushed the bed into the alcove with the pillow near the window. She surrounded the bed with some of her mother's potted plants. That was her tree house alcove. The very first night Kit slept in her tree house alcove, Mother came up to tuck her in. She sat on the edge of Kit's bed and looked around the attic. Kit watched Mother's face carefully. She knew the attic was a far cry from Mother's idea of what a little girl's room should look like. "Well," said Mother at last, "a place for every interest, and every interest in its place. I can see that you've worked hard to make this attic your room. I'm proud of you, Kit." "Thanks," said Kit. "I'm sorry I haven't had time to help you," said Mother. "I'm afraid I've left you all on your own." "That's okay," said Kit. Mother kissed Kit's forehead. Then she picked up Kit's book. "Still reading Robin Hood?" she asked. "Yup," said Kit. "Robin Hood gave me the idea to make a treehouse alcove to sleep in." Kit also had plans for a swinging bridge to connect the window ledge to the tree just outside the window. But she didn't tell Mother. It was going to be a secret escape like Robin Hood had. "Good old Robin Hood," said Mother, "robbing the rich to give to the poor." Kit propped herself up on her elbows and looked at Mother. "Too bad there isn't any Robin Hood today," she said. "If rich people had to give some of their money to the poor, it would make the Depression better." "It would help," said Mother, "but I don't think it would end the Depression." "What will?" asked Kit. "I don't know," said Mother. "Lots of things, I suppose. People will have to work hard, use what they have, face challenges, stay hopeful." She looked around Kit's attic and smiled. "I guess they'll have to do sort of what you've done up here in your attic. They'll have to make changes and realize that changes can be good." Then she kissed Kit again. "Good night, dear," she said. "Don't read too late." "I won't," said Kit. "Good night." After Mother went downstairs, Kit flipped over onto her stomach and looked out the open window. She could hear the leaves rustling outside and see stars peeking through the branches. "Changes can be good," she thought. "That sounds like a headline to me." And that's the end of chapter 4. There are no more chapters to the story, but there is a section called Looking Back, which has some pictures and information about what life was like back in 1934. So in a few days, I will read that chapter aloud too. But I have a couple more things to show you today before we end. One of the other things Kit mentioned that she found in the attic was a camera. And I do have Kit's camera that's made by American Girl. First of all, it comes with this tiny little box, which is what film would have been in. Today we don't use film in our cameras anymore. We take digital pictures, but back when I was a girl, we had to put film in our cameras. We had to take the pictures with it, take the film out, and go have it developed or made into pictures. So back in her day, they had little rolls of film. And she would have a really old time camera here that came in this little camera bag. And cameras have gone through many, many different changes over the years. But this was the type that Kit would have had. So you lift up this little lever and you open it up and you can see the old time camera here. So the lens is here and it kind of pops out as you open up that camera. And I don't think there's any other adjustments that you can make on this particular camera, but I think it's just really cool to kind of show that style of camera. So in 1934, this was what the camera would have looked like. I also have Kit's bed. So in just a moment, I'll show you Kit's bed and a little bit about what her bedroom would have looked like up in the attic. All right, so here's a little bit of a look of what Kit's bedroom would be like, except for you have to picture it in that attic. Here's the bed that comes with Kit. It's an older style metal framed bed, but what's cool about it is it goes from the single bed into kind of a double bed so she could have a friend stay over. The mattress opens up like that, and the blanket that comes with it opens up into kind of a double bed too, so she could have a friend stay over. So her bedroom up in that attic had her bed with her lumpy mattress on it. Had some nice pillows. Had her Robin Hood book and the newspaper she writes, along with her desk, her camera, her typewriter, her swivel chair, and the gooseneck lamp, and the candlestick phone, and all kinds of other interesting things. So Kit's room now fits her well, suits her well, and we'll have to read some more books about Kit and her adventures and find out some more things about life in the 1930s. I hope you'll join me next time to read A Peek into the Past, a look back in the back of the book, and find out a little bit more about 1934. Thank you for joining me today. Hope to see you soon.